Thank you for being with us for this very important discussion about protecting your rights as a multilingual student's parent, guardian, or family member. We are very excited to be offering this critical presentation through support from Family Connections, which is the organization responsible for the Essex County Hub for the New Jersey Statewide Student Support Services System, NJ4S. This presentation is supported by Family Connections, which is the organization responsible for the Essex County Hub for the New Jersey Statewide Student Support Services System, NJ4S. We are thrilled to be offering this presentation to help empower you to understand your rights, whether you are a parent, guardian, or family member supporting a multilingual learner. My name is David Nash. I'm Director of Legal Education and National Outreach for the Foundation for Educational Administration. Through my work, I oversee legal education through the Legal One program, and I am thrilled to have with me Dr. Joanne Negrin. Joanne is a partner in Language and Literacy Associates for Multilingual and Multicultural Education. Joanne has been a leader in addressing issues related to multilingual learners at the state and national levels. And Joanne, I'm so thrilled to have you here with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So today's conversation is really intended to empower you in your role as we are dealing with a set of challenging issues here in New Jersey and across the nation. We want to make sure that you understand the rights that parents and guardians and family members have when it comes to interacting with our public schools. So, we're going to walk through a very important discussion about self-care in these challenging times. In order to support a child, you need to make sure you're supporting yourself. We will talk about important considerations when it comes to talking with children about some of the difficult issues that are occurring here in New Jersey and across the nation. We'll talk about reminding you of your rights in this process. We'll talk about the importance of connecting with community resources, of partnering with our schools, and we will also make sure you are given information on critical additional resources that can help you and your family feel supported. So, Joanne, it's very important that we make sure that we are empowering those who are listening to understand how central they are to this process and how they really can be a partner with the school district.
Absolutely. And I think that that sense of taking control, that sense of empowerment is so important. We don't want to feel like we're helpless because we're not. There are things that we can do to make ourselves safer, to make our families safer, and to feel like we do have some control in a very uncertain time.
So, we're going to begin with an important conversation about self-care. There are so many issues that we are dealing with in New Jersey and across the nation, and making sure that we care for ourselves is really a critical part of this process.
There's a
So,
saying that says that you can't pour from an empty cup. And what that means is that if you are feeling depleted, if you feel like you don't have that much more to give, it makes it really hard to support other people, whether that's your children, other family members, anyone else in your community. So there are some things that we can do to kind of protect ourselves, protect our peace, and make sure that we don't get depleted by the circumstances that are around us. And so, some of the things you can do, the first thing is to just make sure that you stay connected to trusted people, to organizations, to our friends network, making sure that we are still plugged in and that we know what's going on within our community and with our friends and our family. You want to limit exposure to news and social media. It's really tempting, especially now, to try to find out all the latest of what's going on. We probably want to try to limit that, and especially when our kids are around. We don't want to make them overly anxious, and we don't want to make ourselves overly anxious. If you're on social media, you may want to think about how you curate your content. Be very careful of what you click on because whatever you click, it's going to bring 10 times more of the same thing back to you. So, for example, I have some social media feeds that are nothing but just things I like, right? I don't even connect to anybody on them. It's just bikes and food and travel. So when I don't want anything else in my head, that's where I go. And that's what I see. And that is a nice way that I can protect myself. That's an example of how you could kind of curate your social media to give yourself a little bit of self-protection. Reflecting on the things that you're grateful for, just even if nothing else is going right, gosh, the temperature of this tea is just perfect, right? Focusing in on the little things that make us grateful, that are going well for us, that make us happy, can be very powerful. Make plans for what you want, even if it's something that might be farther down the road. Envision yourself in that situation, in that space, with that capability that you'd like to have in the future. That can really help you to deal with things in your present. And also make some preparations for worst case scenarios. That doesn't sound very protective, but if you know that in the event that something does go wrong, you've already made provisions for your family members, for anything else that you need to make provisions for, can give you some peace of mind. And also do some small things for yourself. Whatever it is that makes you happy, try to incorporate that into your day and into your lifestyle.
It's such wonderful advice. And as you said, even as we are preparing for challenging situations, it certainly can be stressful to think about challenging situations, but it can also be empowering to know that you're taking the steps that you can. So preparing for the worst is an important part of you feeling like I am doing my part. I'm taking control of the things that I can in this process. And we do know that for a variety of reasons, emergency situations can come up or tragedies can occur. And we want to think through, are we taking the steps we need to do to support our children, to address complex issues around finance, to address complex issues around who can make educational decisions if I, as a parent or guardian, am not immediately available to make those decisions. So these are important things for us to think about. A will certainly can be one of the things that we do need to consider in a tragic situation where a parent or guardian does unexpectedly pass away. Having clear direction for that child is critical. So thinking through in advance who would be the adults who would become the guardians of those children. How do we handle any resources that we have, any assets that we have? How do you directly make sure that the decisions that you want to be made to support a child are the decisions that are being made? So taking that step to think through drafting a will is very important for any adult, but a
And
critical step.
and if you are entrusting another adult with your children in a will, right, in the event that something would happen to you, you want to make sure that you have that conversation with them first to make sure that they know that that's what's on your mind, and also to make sure that they're in agreement with that.
Very important. There could be some assumptions that we don't want to make. We really want to make sure that we know that the person that we have in mind is there and willing to do what we would like them to do in these situations. Now, of course, short of that tragedy, short of having a parent or guardian pass away, other situations might arise where that parent or guardian is just not available, and can no longer make the day-to-day decisions that need to be made for a child. School officials need to be able to interact with a responsible adult in those situations. So there are other things we need to think about. Powers of attorney, where we are granting adults specific legal authority to manage our affairs. We do give you a PowerPoint that comes with this presentation, and in that PowerPoint, we have a link to resources if you are interested in using the power of attorney option and designating other trusted adults who can manage specific affairs. And along with that, the affidavit student process in New Jersey is critical. It allows you, as a parent or guardian, to designate another responsible adult, and oftentimes that might be a responsible adult who lives in the same community. who would now be authorized to interact with a school district and make decisions for a child. If we have a situation where a parent or guardian is not available, we've seen situations where parents or guardians are unjustly detained, but yet they are detained and are unable to directly care for their child at that moment. Having another trusted adult who can be designated to make those decisions is critical. And it allows that child to have a much more stable situation where they may be able to stay in the same school district where they were before. They may have another adult who they already know who is there for them. So the affidavit student process is an important one to learn. And we do give you more information, and we'll discuss that in a little bit more detail. But in the PowerPoint with this presentation, you do have access to information about how to do this. And certainly emergency contacts. Again, it might be that just for that hour or that day, something happens and you're not available, but your child needs to have somebody who can come pick them up, who can make sure they're okay, who can supervise them while you're detained and dealing with perhaps some sort of emergency situation. So having up-to-date emergency contact information so that you and others who you designate can be quickly contacted in the event of some sort of an emergency situation. So, Joanne, I know these sound a little bit scary, but it can be very empowering to take the time to prepare for these situations.
Exactly. It's if something did happen to you, that would be a big load off of your mind, knowing that your children were taken care of, that your finances are taken care of, that somebody is going to be in charge of that situation while you can't be.
So some of these can sound complex, some of these options that are available, but there really is nothing to be fearful of when it comes to, for example, the affidavit student process. So, you have a child who is in a community going to the school district, and something happens where you're not able to care for that child. You can plan for that terrible occurrence, and you can certainly designate another responsible individual who is present and willing and able to support that child if that situation arises. In those situations, you would look to have a resident sworn statement saying that they are willing to assume responsibility for school-related duties, have appropriate documentation, have an affidavit that is properly notarized, and a sworn statement from the parent or guardian, plus a documentation that there is some emergency, there is some hardship that doesn't allow you to be present at that time. So the forms that are available from the New Jersey Department of Education that we give you a link to in this presentation really walk you through this process and make it a much more user-friendly process. And again, it will empower you to make sure that there is somebody there to make decisions regarding the child if we have these emergency situations arise. And certainly in this situation, as we mentioned, we give you a link to the New Jersey Department of Education forms that spell all of this out for you. If we had a situation where you have identified an adult who is willing to support your child, and perhaps you haven't yet had a formal affidavit that has been notarized, but you have some clear evidence that this other adult agreed to care for a child, school districts are supposed to recognize that as well. There are these formal steps that ideally you want to take fully through, beginning to end, and it makes things much cleaner and easier. But the law does recognize that perhaps, some piece of paper isn't technically as complete as we would like, but this adult really has agreed to care for a child. So keep that in mind. Do everything you can to fully complete all of the paperwork, but certainly make sure there's clear documentation of another adult willing to support that child. So, Joanne, talking to your children is so important, but it can seem very intimidating to know how to have conversations around some of these scary issues.
Absolutely. And it also is important that it be a little bit different, whether depending on the age of the child. So, the first thing that you want to do, and this is particularly important with our younger children, is just create that sense of safety, right? Acknowledge that they have a right to feel scared and angry. You might be feeling those ways as well, but you are letting them know that you're doing everything that you can to keep them safe, as is everybody else in the community, right? Their school, their teachers, any other community people that they are have relationships with, we're all working together to do everything possible to keep them safe and to keep everybody safe. You want to make sure that explanations are age appropriate, and make sure that we're not putting too much on them. Kind of using them as our therapist, right? Because sometimes there is a tendency for us to want to unburden ourselves, and we want to make sure that we are keeping things age appropriate and just the information that they need in order to have a sense of security. And we also want to, as we mentioned before, limit exposure to news, limit exposure to social media. And there's a great article here from the American Academy of Pediatrics talking about how to do that.
And that is so important. And it's something that does require some careful attention. If your child has a cell phone or another internet-enabled device, there's a very good chance they are making decisions on their own, and they might not be telling you how much time they're spending on social media, how much time they're spending looking at some of the latest news. So we don't want to make assumptions that our kids are not interested in this information. You really want to be proactive, have conversations, proactively talk about why we don't want to have so much exposure on these
Mhm.
issues.
And just reassure that we're all doing everything that we can to keep them safe. With your teenagers, again, it needs to be age appropriate so they're able to handle a little bit more. And also, you want to talk to them about the importance of their own actions. You want to talk to them about the importance of staying out of trouble. You want to talk to them about ways of managing their emotions because they have intense emotions even under the best of circumstances. And under these circumstances, they can come out in some ways that can be really destructive, not only for them, but also for the goals of the family. So, how can they manage those feelings? That's another thing that you want to talk to them about. If you notice that your child is having trouble handling their feelings, talk to your school. They have people who specialize in that can help them or connect them to other people that can help them. So you want to make sure that if you do notice anything that's going on, that you open that line of communication to your school because they have lots of different ways of helping. That's really what they're there for. You especially want to talk about the importance of limiting social media, but not just limiting social media, but also critically evaluating content. There are a lot of bad actors out there that expressly try to recruit, indoctrinate teenagers, right? Who might be feeling like their sense of self is not secure. They're feeling a lot of insecurities, and there's someone out there who's very happy to make them part of a group. So you want to talk to them about evaluating content, evaluating sources, and if somebody is making them feel outraged about something, why, right? What's the reason that they're making them feel that way? And if they do encounter something, whether it's on social media, whether there's an emergency, anything at all, tell them, really stress to them how important it is to talk to a trusted adult and who are the trusted adults that they should contact in an emergency. Make sure that they know what to do if anything should happen.
So certainly, it is so important that you also recognize the specific legal rights that you have and the child that you are responsible for has as well. So very important to empower ourselves and understand those rights. Even if you are undocumented, you still have rights under the United States Constitution. And these rights include the right of children to attend school. It is never the business of a school district to look at whether a child is a U.S. citizen or not. That has nothing to do with that child's fundamental right to an education. You should also know that you and your property cannot be searched or taken by law enforcement officials without a warrant that is signed by a judge. Very important to understand. This is not something where you can simply have that property searched and seized without that. You do have the right, if you are confronted by law enforcement officials at any level, including federal immigration enforcement officials, the right to remain silent, to not answer questions in that moment, to wait for a representation to be there for you. So you do not have to feel pressured to speak in a scary situation in that moment if you don't choose to. And you have the right to a fair process, to due process if your liberty is at stake, your freedom is at stake, your property is at stake. So there are fundamental rights that we do have regardless of your citizenship status. Um, if you were to encounter immigration and enforcement officials, you do want to remember those rights and talk with your child about the rights that they have as well. So, sort of core to us in the United States is the right to remain silent. If you choose to exercise that right and don't want to interact with law enforcement officials, you want to keep saying that. If you've made that choice and you or your child is being pressured to answer questions, they have that right to remain silent. It is difficult in these situations to remain calm, but it's so important. So if you or a family member or child is approached by immigration enforcement officials or other law enforcement, so important to be calm and to not create what could be perceived as a dangerous situation, and not running in those situations. So important to do that, important to be truthful. You don't want to provide false information or false documents. Again, you have the right to not speak. Um, you can demand a judicial warrant that's signed by a judge. If you have immigration enforcement or other law enforcement officials trying to enter your home, you do have the right, if you choose to not open a door. You do have the right to a lawyer if you are detained. You have the right to refuse to sign any documents without one, without having a representative who has a chance to look at whatever documents you are being provided. So in the moment, it's very difficult to think rationally about these issues. So taking the time in advance to think them through for yourself and for your child is very important. So I would urge you to have those conversations and understand these particular rights. Of course, we do know situations occur where immigration enforcement officials might show up at a school or some other location where a child does see them. Certainly, if immigration enforcement officials show up at a school, there are very specific legal parameters around that. For school districts, maintaining a safe environment does require that they follow established policies, follow state and federal law, prioritize student safety as our number one priority, of course, in these situations. So a few specific things are important for you to be aware of. Uh, ICE agents cannot simply enter school premises without a court order signed by a judge or exigent circumstances, an emergency situation that absolutely requires law enforcement to enter school premises at some moment. So that situation almost never occurs. You're sort of imagining something extreme. Somebody robbed a bank and they across the street from a school, and then they ran across the street into the school. Um, Law enforcement officials would be allowed to follow that person into the school. but that's how rare of a situation we are talking about. Short of that, um, you would not have immigration enforcement officials coming into a school without a court order signed by a judge. Um, New Jersey law now prohibits any law enforcement agents from operating in schools while wearing a mask. We do see situations across the country where we've had immigration enforcement officials wearing a mask. New Jersey law prohibits that while they are operating here in New Jersey. There is extensive training that the school staff, who are sort of the front line, who are there greeting any guests who wish to enter a school building. So there's training that school districts provide to those frontline staff members so they understand what to do in the moment of an encounter. And again, somebody who is working at a front desk is probably not the school board attorney, is probably not a legal expert, but school staff are trained now to understand that we cannot have law enforcement officials simply barging into a school unless we follow a process that would require evidence that they have a true court order signed by a judge. So there are very good resources that have been put out by the New Jersey Department of Education to help school districts on this issue. You, as a parent or guardian, don't need to be the expert on this, but it's important for you to know that these protocols are in place if we did ever run into this type of a
And
situation.
and if you did have questions about it, you can always ask your school district. You can ask at your school, you can ask your central administrators, and they will provide you with that information.
Absolutely. School districts have thought about this issue very carefully in order to prepare for situations that may arise. In New Jersey, we also have something that's called the Immigrant Trust Directive. It was first issued in November of 2018. It has now been enacted into state law, so it's no longer just a policy, as it was under the Attorney General of the state of New Jersey back in 2018. It now is a very specific state law. And really, it is a landmark law. It was a landmark state policy before that. And it does make clear that New Jersey law enforcement officers cannot stop, question, arrest, or search individuals based solely on suspected immigration status, cannot ask for immigration status unless it's necessary for some sort of a serious investigation, cannot participate in federal immigration enforcement operations, and cannot provide those federal immigration enforcement officials with access to state or local resources, equipment, or databases. So it is important to recognize that it is not the role of our local and state law enforcement to be involved in immigration enforcement. Anybody who is living here in the state of New Jersey should not be fearful about communicating with local or state law enforcement about issues that could arise. A crime might arise in your community, and it's important that you know you can share information, report those issues, and there won't be any questioning of your immigration status in that process. In New Jersey, we have some additional laws that have recently come into effect that are important to understand. So we have Public Law 2025, Chapter 401, that was signed January 20th by our outgoing Governor Phil Murphy. That law requires the Attorney General to develop model policies for school districts on dealing with sensitive locations like public schools and what to do when there are immigration enforcement efforts that are attempted in those locations. So New Jersey already has very detailed guidance on this, and it's just important for you to know that there will be even more guidance and strong direction for school districts to give you a sense that children should know that they have the right to be in our schools without fear of immigration enforcement efforts specifically occurring in our schools. So we have other bills that recently were passed as well. Um, uh, A 4071 blocks state and local police from assisting ICE in raids or providing resources to them like office space and databases. A470 restricts law enforcement from sharing a person's immigration status without a warrant. S3114 and 3216 prohibit law enforcement officers from wearing a mask when they are interacting with the public. So these are important things for you to know and some additional protections that have been put in place here in the state of New Jersey. These issues we know are complex. So there are some very good resources that can be helpful in understanding your rights, understanding the state of the law here in New Jersey. So in the PowerPoint presentation that goes with this recording, we give you important links. One of those is to the State of New Jersey website, a Know Your Rights information hub that really walks through in a wonderful way your rights as an individual and resources that are there to support you. The New Jersey Department of Education has some very good information it has provided on immigrant students and family policy, and annual memos that it sends out reminding school districts that they are not to ask about things like citizenship status. We give you some other wonderful resources, including pro bono legal service providers that are available to help if a legal issue arises. And we know how scary those issues can be. So the state of New Jersey has made it a priority to make information available about legal services that would be at no cost to you. And some wonderful advocacy organizations as well that can provide you with some additional information and support. So, Joanne, certainly connecting with your community is more important than ever right now.
Absolutely. Just like we were saying before, that this is something that is so important for our mental health and well-being, and it can be very important for us materially as well. So right now, schools and districts are really trying to build and leverage relationships that they have with you, with older students, right? Students who are in high school and even middle school are very involved in what's going on, and they want to be part of the solution as well, and that empowers them. So we are trying to involve them in this process. Community leaders, organizations that are within our community. We want to form partnerships with them, as well as the local press, right? There's a lot of press that's available in different languages, newspapers, radio stations. And so we want to make sure that we're getting the information out in as many ways as possible and in as many languages as possible. That also includes partnering with the houses of worship that are in our community, because a lot of people go to them regularly. And so we want that's another place where they can get good information and another connection to resources. And so we are trying to develop every single network that we can to provide support for our families that need it. Some types of community support that districts are trying to provide. One of them would be legal referrals and pro bono, which means free support, which Dave talked about in the previous slide. Counseling for adults or children. We have people who specialize in that. And so if somebody is struggling, if you're struggling, talk to your school, talk to trusted people in your community, because they're going to know the help that's available. And we have resources specifically for this. Mutual aid groups. There are people who are trying to make sure that if someone doesn't feel that they can leave their apartment because they're afraid of immigration being, is outside, they will run groceries or medicine or whatever they need to those people so that they don't have to go out. Online library services, it's a really good way to make sure that you're able to get, whether it's books, educational materials, anything that your library provides. Food pantries, and then they have these trade and barter or buy nothing groups where either you can, if you don't have money, you can offer someone to be able to fix something, for example, in exchange for something that you want, or these buy nothing groups that work online and people are offering things for free that they don't want anymore. So it's a really great way to sort of recycle things in the community, keep things from being thrown away, and make sure that people have a way of getting what they need in a way that's very cost effective, cost nothing.
It's really wonderful to take the time to look at the resources that are available. Sometimes there are great supports that families just don't know about, and
Mhm.
it can make a real difference in your lives and the lives of your children.
And you can find the Buy Nothing groups if you are on social media. You go to just type in the search bar Buy Nothing and then whatever town you live in, and you will probably find a Buy Nothing group there. And you can join it, and that way you'll see all of their postings.
Of course, this presentation is brought to us by Family Connections, which oversees the NJ4S hub for Essex County. There are hubs throughout the state for those who might be listening to this presentation outside of Essex County. But we did include here as an example the website for Family Connections that is providing a wonderful mental health supports for school districts in Essex County. There are incredible resources available through NJ4S Essex County for students, parents, educators, community stakeholders. There are webinars, community events, and so many other resources that are available. So we would urge you to take the time to educate yourself and perhaps, have a conversation with your school district about what resources they are using from the NJ4S Hub. Partnering with schools is also so important as we're thinking through these sensitive topics. You want to have the sense that we are all in this together. So taking the time to communicate with schools to understand what they are doing really is very important. So, Joanne, certainly that notion that all children have the right to a public education is an important unifying theme that we should start with.
Absolutely. And the New Jersey Department of Education felt the same way. In fact, they put out a broadcast memo in January of 2025 reiterating their stance. And this quote comes directly from there that the New Jersey Department of Education is unwavering in its commitment to ensuring that every student, regardless of immigration status, national origin, or religion, can attend public schools safely.
So certainly, as you are interacting with the school district, we want to think about the various stages of what happens as you're perhaps first enrolling a child. So the school district's registration office might be your first point of contact. You just moved into the community. You want to make sure that the child is enrolled in our public schools. So as we go through that process, keep in mind the U.S. Supreme Court case, Plyler v. Doe, made clear back in 1982 that school districts will never ask about citizenship status, will never require you, and can never require you to produce any sort of documents that you would only have as a U.S. citizen. So very important to understand that that can never be part of what you're asked to provide. So,
Another thing
Joanne,
that is really important to know about is what is the process for identifying a student as a multilingual learner, as a student who needs ESL or bilingual services, because it has nothing to do, sometimes parents think it has to do with your last name or what you look like, and it has nothing to do with any of that. There is a very strict process that was created by the New Jersey Department of Education, and school districts must follow that process exactly. Even the words that the state gives them, they can't change. So this is something that every school district, no matter how large or how small in the state of New Jersey, is going to follow this. And so when you come in, you're going to be given a home language survey. And that survey asks some questions. Sometimes the questions are a little bit complicated. The way that it's worded is a little complicated, but you can ask questions about it. What do you mean? And the important thing is to give the most accurate information you can. You don't need to be afraid to let the school district know that you speak another language at home, because this is something that's going to help us to decide whether or not your student might need to be tested to see if they need ESL services. So we want to make sure that we're we're putting accurate information there. And if we're not sure what is accurate because we don't understand it, please ask someone. If they don't know, they'll get someone who does. Another thing that's important is that your child or the child that you're registering must be placed in an age-appropriate class. So even if they didn't have the opportunity to go to school for a few years, they're still going to go to the grade level for their age. This is really important. And most districts do this. Some districts still aren't really sure what to do in those situations, but they should be putting the child in the appropriate grade for the age of the student. Another thing that happens sometimes is that if you have an older teen, they might go to register and the school district might say, oh, they're too old, they're not going to be able to graduate. Here's information about how to get a GED, which is an equivalency high school diploma that they get outside of the school district. And that's not okay. Your student has the right to attend school through age 20, sometimes to age 21, and there's really no way that districts can say no to that. So that's something that is very important. If you do have an older child who you attempt to register in the district and they say no, that's something that you can contest.
And you might even have a child who's 17, 18, 19 years old and perhaps graduated high school in their native country. But it's possible that they're still entitled to be enrolled in a public school here in New Jersey. So if the education the child received is not comparable to what they would have received here in New Jersey, a child still may be entitled to enroll, even if they did finish their high school education.
Yes, and most districts would honor that.
Absolutely.
So your front office in the school has a very important role, and you should know what that role is, right? The front office are, I like to call them the ambassadors of the school. They are the ones who most people will deal with first. And so we want our staff at the front office to be friendly, to be welcoming, to be able to help you with what you need. And if you don't find that, let someone in the school district know. It's really important because that way we can, if there's something that we need to correct, we can correct it. If there's something that we need to explain, we can explain it. So that gives us the opportunity to make sure that everybody understand each other. And the other thing is that they're also the first ones to interact with outsiders to keep students safe. So if somebody were to come in from ICE who wanted access to the school, for example, they're the ones who would be in charge of following the procedures of the school district to ensure that the person who needs to make those determinations is called and that they don't go any further without authorization.
So it's very important, of course, to recognize your rights during the enrollment process. And we've said this before, but it's so important that we do want to stress this, that you don't have any need here in New Jersey or across the nation to prove your citizenship status. That's
We don't even
never,
want to know
that's
your
right.
citizenship status.
We don't even want to know. So it's not something that you'll be asked about, that you should feel a need to volunteer. Districts cannot mandate any sort of specific documents that you would only have as a citizen. And whatever information you are providing to show that you really live in the community and are entitled for your child to go to school has to be considered. And
Right.
that's important to stress.
And there is a list of documents that are acceptable as proof of residency in the school district. So to be clear, they can't ask you for anything about your citizenship status or your immigration status in the country, but yes, they can ask you, do you live in our school district? And there's a list on the Department of Education website of lots of different options of documentation that they can ask you to prove that you're a resident in the town where you want your child to go to school. So, immigration status, citizenship status, not okay. Do you live in town? Yes, that's okay.
Absolutely. Now, of course, a situation might arise where the school district thinks your child is not entitled to go to that school district, but maybe they made a mistake. Maybe you really do live in town and your child is entitled to go to that school. If there's a determination reached by the district that you're not eligible, you do have the right to appeal that decision. And during any period of appeal, the child is allowed to continue to be in that school district. So very important, and the school district does have to provide you with information on how to do an appeal if you ever get to that stage. Also important to know that if you're coming from another country or even another state, you do have up to 30 days to provide information about things like immunizations, to show that a child has received those, to gather other records that you might have, educational records about that child. So there is a provisional enrollment that allows your child to be enrolled, even if you don't have all of those documents immediately available. And if we have a situation where a child or family is homeless, that is not a barrier in any way to the child being enrolled and educated. A homeless child has to be immediately enrolled, even if there were no immunizations that the child received. There is a homelessness liaison that's in place in every school district, and that liaison would be there to work with you, your family, your child to get you the support that you need. We do have a student management system, of course, in place in every school district in the state of New Jersey to make sure that we have full and accurate information about our students. Directory information, basic information, student names and contact information, um, including information about place of birth, is considered directory information that could be available publicly. However, every parent or guardian does have the right to choose to opt out of the sharing of even that basic directory information about a child. So it's very important for you to recognize that just like every other parent or guardian in the school district, you have the right to decide if you don't want that information shared. And of course, it's very important, as we've stressed, for you to share with the school district up-to-date contact information in the event of an emergency. If you can't be reached, very important that the school district know how to reach others and that there's lots of options to reach you. So maybe you have a cell phone number, maybe there's an email, maybe there's a place where the school district knows they could contact another who could reach you. Very important to share that information.
Yes, absolutely. And this is something that can be done generally in the main office of the school building that your child attends. So it makes it very easy to do. Also, a lot of times during school district events, there will be people there who, if you don't have access to the student management system, to the parent portal online, they can help you with that. They can help you with change of address. They can help you update your contacts. They can do all of those things. So school districts really try to make sure that they have updated information. But if you have updated information to give them, you can usually do that in the office of your school, in the main office. The other thing that's important is to make sure that you have the right people in your system as people who can take your child out of school. So if you needed to have your child picked up to go to a doctor's appointment or someone else, you're working and someone else needs to pick them up from school, that person actually needs to be in the student management system as a trusted contact. Otherwise, the school is not allowed to release your child to them.
So taking the time to update those, you might not always think about that. Maybe now you're in the community for a year or two, and all the information you provided was accurate when you first enrolled your child, but something changed, and there is new information that you need to share. Very important to keep that information up to date.
Yes, and you can update it as often as you need to.
Absolutely. So, Joanne, of course, the notion of having a safe, supportive environment is just so important, and there are a lot of different factors that go into this.
Absolutely. And so we try, as school district people, we try very hard to make sure that we're creating a safe and supportive environment for our students. So, what might a safe, supportive environment in the school look like? Very often, what we try to do is we try to make sure that our students are reflected in the building, that there are pictures, that there are art, there's languages that reflect the communities of the students who attend the school. We might decide that we're going to center immigration or migration stories in our classroom, in our curriculum, and that helps to sort of normalize that experience for those students who have been through that experience and also for students who have not, that it's just another experience that people have. And also, staff are trained on policies and procedures, everything from how to handle a student who might be dealing with trauma to what to do if immigration shows up in the front office. Every single person in the school is usually trained on those things. We also like to have opportunities for discussion groups, especially with our older students, but even with the younger ones, where they can talk to each other with a counselor who can help them. And mental health resources are available, and all you have to do is just reach out to your school. And if there's not a person in the building, they'll know where there's someone outside of the building, but they will make that happen. And also, schools are mindful that in the current environment, there may be an increase in bullying, and they're aware of that. They're keeping an eye out for it and working with our students to address those issues proactively so that everybody feels safe and welcome. And so, those are some things that you should expect to see in a school. And these are things that you can also have a conversation about with your teachers, with your principals. They'll be happy to tell you about the ways that they are trying to make sure everyone feels safe, supported, and included.
And of course, as a parent or guardian or family member, you have such important insights into this process. You might be the one who knows that something is different about a child, that perhaps the child has been targeted or bullied, that perhaps a child is struggling with their mental health. So never be fearful about asking for help. It's so important as early as possible if you have information to share it with school officials.
It's what we do. It's what we're here for. And we are very happy when we can connect a student and get them what they need.
Of course, we also know that, a situation might arise. Perhaps your child did violate some rule. Perhaps there is some potential discipline that needs to be imposed. It's so important for school officials to understand context. If there is some sort of trauma that your child has experienced that could be impacting the child's behavior, very important to make sure school officials understand this, communicate with you, work with you. In so many cases, even if a student has broken a rule, even if there is some code of conduct violation, very often the most effective response is something other than suspending that child out of school. So you want to have those conversations. You want to make sure that the school principal, that school counselors, that a child's teachers, if there is something that helps them understand your child better, it's important to share information. And Joanne, of
And
course, managing confidential information is so critical.
absolutely. A lot of times, even though the school district won't ask for that information, it won't ask for immigration status. Sometimes our students will confide. They'll confide in their teacher if if that's happened, right? If that's their situation. And so we're, to be clear, we don't have to report that to anyone, right? That's not something that we are required to share with anybody. However, sometimes it could be beneficial if someone else knows something about it. It might be something that the school counselor that sees the child might have a little bit more context for. It might be something that's showing up in their academics. And if that is the case, that it's beneficial to share that in confidence with another staff member it's really important that we not write that down anywhere. That we if we have to tell someone, we tell someone, but it's not written down. It's not in any records anywhere where anybody might be able to find it.
So just to reiterate, of course, nobody should ever ask you about issues like immigration status, but it is possible that your child chooses or that you choose at some point to share some piece of information. If you do, there certainly is no obligation for school officials to tell anyone else that information that you have shared. So we always urge school officials to never ask those questions and to not keep any sort of a written record of things that there's no requirement to record. There's no requirement to write down. So, of course, the New Jersey Department of Education has thought very carefully about the issues around immigration enforcement and what might happen in school districts, just to make sure that school districts are prepared. So, the state of New Jersey has provided some detailed guidance to school districts to think through these issues and to understand, protocols that we should be putting into place. So if an immigration agent seeks entry into a school in any sort of official capacity, the guidance that comes from the state of New Jersey urges whoever that staff member is to immediately contact the chief school administrator. And of course, that might happen through the school principal, but going up the chain of command very quickly if we have that sort of a situation. And the school district will have a process. So rest assured that just because somebody claims they are law enforcement or immigration enforcement, they cannot and should not be allowed to simply walk into that school. There would be a process that really, in almost every single case, would require a court order signed by a judge that is verified by the school district before you would have those individuals coming into a school. So physical access to school premises is something that school districts have all been urged to think very carefully about and to put in place strong protocols so that we don't have unauthorized individuals just walking into our schools. There are key questions to keep in mind when it comes to school security. So certainly they can fall into various categories. One is law enforcement and access. So as we've stressed, school districts really are required to have policies for communicating with immigration enforcement officials and not sharing confidential information absent those court orders signed by judges. School districts across the state have been urged to do a great deal of training for their staff on these issues, to think through how to control access to school grounds as well, and to address all visitors coming into school. There are very important considerations when it comes to student information and safety. So, as we've stressed, it's important to have up-to-date, accurate emergency contact and pickup information for children to the extent that it is possible to work with families on issues like safe walking routes. That's an important set of conversations to have if that is possible to do. Rest assured that there are strong state laws and federal laws to protect student privacy, to protect the privacy of data. And school districts here in New Jersey and across the country are required to have very strong protections of that confidential information. Um, and if there is a situation where perhaps some state agency needs to be involved, perhaps there's a discipline issue or a truancy issue that occurs, those situations do not require individuals to reveal immigration status to have the issue addressed, to have the truancy issue addressed. So rest assured that if we do run into that situation, you're not required to reveal your immigration status, even in that process. There are some other practical considerations that come into play. It's important if you have questions about how your school district is handling these issues to ask those questions. To ask school district what protocols do you have in place for your facilities, for any sort of external areas outside of the buildings, and how do we deal with security issues? School districts, are charged with having a plan to address safety in those situations in schools and outside of schools on school grounds. It's okay to ask those questions to understand what protocols are in place. As we've stressed, there are some important ways that you can be empowered to make sure that your wishes are followed, that a child does have support if there is an emergency. So again, options like a power of attorney in cases of separation are important for you to keep in mind. And having a plan for students if there is an emergency situation that occurs, very important to think through those contacts. And certainly, Joanne, having support to deal with the trauma that could occur if you have, for example, a family member of a child who is detained, that can have a huge impact.
Absolutely. And this is something that we also want to make sure that that the school knows so that we can help support that family as best we can.
So we do give you lots of resources. Part of what we wanted to do in this presentation was stress that you have certain rights, your child has rights, family members have rights, and you don't have to memorize all of this. There's lots of supports to help you along the way. So the New Jersey Department of Education has some wonderful resources that are designed for families. And we give you important access to those links here. Joanne, any thoughts on these great resources?
Just to look them over and to, talk about them with your family, make any plans that you need to make, and it will help to make you feel a little bit less stressed knowing that the worst is already planned for.
As you can see here are some examples of resources from the Department of Education specifically designed for families. Some additional resources from the Department of Education to deal with trauma that we know does happen related to issues like deportation. And we know that we have so many children in New Jersey and across the nation dealing with that trauma. So there are a lot of wonderful resources to help on that front.
Hmm.
Uh, we give you some other great resources to understand your legal rights. Um, so again, Joanne, it's so important to not feel like you have to be an expert on these issues, but to know that there is support.
Yes, and to know where to go to find information. A lot of the links that are here, some of them are directed towards families, others are directed towards educators, but you might also want to look through those and see what see what the standards, what the expectations are for schools, and that way you can ask questions if you want to know how your school district is meeting them.
So we'll just walk through a few of these slides, but I just want you to have a sense of how many resources we are providing for you. And you can see some great resources that are focused on every aspect, directly supporting children, supporting families, helping school districts know how to work with you on these issues. And we'll end with a few key takeaways. Joanna, this first point, um, preparation is empowerment, and it can go a long way towards having that sense that we are doing our part in this process.
If you've already prepared for the worst, you can now focus on the best.
Absolutely. And knowledge is power. So knowing your rights does go a long way. And we highlight a couple of those rights again here. If you ever are encountered by law enforcement or your child, you do have the right to remain silent. And again, law enforcement and immigration enforcement officials generally do not have the right to enter a school or your home without a warrant signed by a judge. Um, Educational access. So, Joanne, we've stressed this throughout as well. School districts never are going to be concerned about citizenship status.
Absolutely. As I said, we don't want to know.
Supporting children. So, Joanne, you want to talk again as a sort of a final point about connecting with our children, understanding what they're experiencing, and connecting with the community?
Absolutely, and just making sure that that whatever we are talking to them, because whether they're showing it or not, they are having thoughts about this, and so we want to make sure that we are communicating with them and addressing their anxieties about it. But we also want to make sure that our conversations are age appropriate. And with our teenagers, we want to talk about making sure that they know how to manage their feelings and that it doesn't erupt into any kind of behavior. And also talk to them about digital media literacy and the things that they're seeing online and how to make judgments of that.
And certainly, we noted it several times that we do include links to things like free legal services if you need them, and some other wonderful supports if you or a child needs help with counseling, if there's a need to access things like food pantries. So there are some critical community supports that are available on all of these fronts. Joanne, I want to thank you for being a partner in this presentation. And together, I hope we've sent a message that school districts want to partner with families, want to have a safety net that is available, and want to do everything they can to make sure that our children thrive.
You're the reason we're here. So please engage with us, and we will be more than happy to do everything possible to get you whatever you need.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.